Hey everybody, we're back at it. It's only a day later, but we had a few questions there. Bob, this is your video for you about vents. YouTube people, these are videos, I've mentioned this before, these videos are done for DIYmolds.com. That's why if you hear me using people's names or people that have asked specific questions on that forum. So there'll be links down in the description down below that you folks on YouTube can check out to see where the group is and maybe join in discussions as well. If you want to join up, it's free to join. Anyway, we discussed a little bit yesterday about vents and placement of vents and why or what sort of places to put them in. I'll just show you. I just finished placing a couple just a while ago. This is, you can either do it on your first coat, your second coat. I've even put them on as late as 5 or 6 or 7 coats in. I think I've changed my mind and added a few. I'll give you an example here. So here's this crow, and you would think, because of his beak, you would think, okay, I should put one here because it's going to trap air. But because he's on a bit of an angle, now you got to think of him upside down. When I pour him, there's going to be enough angle that I can tip him and give him a bang and burp that air out of here. But where it's really hard to do is in places like this. So you can see there's a window here, in here, and then there's a tail and a small branch. Now if I'm pouring, it's going to be really hard to get the concrete into this space and not create a big void under there. So that's where I want to make a vent, so it'll allow the air, allow the concrete to flow and force any air out. And again, I put another one on the front. As you can see, that's quite a big overhang there. You can see how deep that is. So if I was just going to pour the concrete, it might be really hard to get some in there. So I placed another vent just on the front here too. So you don't have to go crazy like on every single model and add vent. I only start adding them onto like medium-sized models. Smalls, I don't worry because you can roll them around quite a bit. And sorry about the Christmas tree. You could roll them around quite a bit and burp the air out. It's when you get into the larger models where it gets a little bit tougher. So I'll give you an example. So this is the springbok skull that I did, and the clay work is all finished on it. So similar to the bull skull I did last year. So I'm going to put a vent at the tip of each of the horns, and they're going to be facing down. So you got to remember everything's upside down, right? So you're going to face them down, because when you pour, they're going to be up, and then that's when you can watch your concrete coming up through them. You'll have your fiberglass shell or your plaster will be on top, and you just drill a hole through it, and you'll be able to see when the concrete comes up, and then you know you've got a good flow into that area there. So I'm going to put one at each tip here, and down here underneath on the snout side. You can see that it gets ridiculously hard if that's upside down to get all the air out of that spot to try and get a perfect pour. So I'm going to put a little vent down on the very tip of that. But I'll just show you what I do to make a vent. So I'll just try and set my little tripod up here so I can get a little view of the table here. Hopefully. There we go. So I use just magazine paper. Like this was taught to me by JB, who I think has years and years and years of practice on all of us, I think, put together. He's always been very helpful to me, but this was his suggestion for me. It was a little piece of the magazine paper, and then I just score a little cross in it. Oops. So there. Now that's got a cross in it, so that's able to be opened up from the back side of the rubber. So then for a straw, I'm just using, these are those tiny little cocktail straws. I found them myself, I just found them a little bit too small. This little flex straw has worked out really good size for me. So obviously if you're using a big model like what Tuscany uses when he's doing life-size or bigger than life-size models, you're going to use like a full-size drinking straw size, right? But for these small models, you don't want anything much bigger than that, or you're going to get like a big icicle hanging off of there, and then you got a bit of repair work to do afterwards. So anyway, so all I do is you cut yourself a little piece of straw. That's what, about 3/4 of an inch or so. Then I just put a little bit of rubber just around the edge of it, as you can see there. I'm going to stick it just on the piece of magazine paper. I hope that's showing up. Yeah, it is. So you can see it's on there. So let that set up for 2-3 minutes or so. So I've pre-done one. So you can see here. Here's the little piece with the X. Is that going to focus on there? With the X on it, the little straw. So now you can either put your rubber on your model. So say like your second coat or your first coat, and then just stick it right onto the wet rubber. And if not, if you're doing this, say this is like coat 4 or 5, just put a little dab of rubber like this. You can see on the corners, and then you're going to stick it here. I'll just pretend. I'll come over here. And there. Whoops. There you can see. Now that's stuck right in there. Obviously, when I make this one, it's going to be a shorter version of that one, but you can see how that's on there now. And then there's your vent. Okay? So, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So I hope that helps you out, Bob, or any of the other YouTube gang or forum members. And I'll just mention one other thing we were talking about yesterday was seaming. About how JB had mentioned to me, you don't always have to repeat others' mistakes. Some people might see this seam and you think, wow, that's crazy. So what happened was I had to do a clay rework on this model. This section up here, this bottom 1/2 or 3/4 inch, had a little scallop in it, and it came to really like a hairline point, little arch, and there's no way it would have survived a demolding. It was so thin it would have snapped off. So what I did was I did clay work to match the rest of the top, and then created a scallop across here, continuous, so it all looks all the same, like it was meant to be that way. So what I had to fix too was it had a seam running up, but it went hopped over, hopped over, hopped over, hopped over, hopped over, hopped over. So it had a big ugly seam running straight across all of these. And when you have the spiral effect like this, what becomes really obvious is a seam when it's hopping across each of these. So what I did was I came up from the bottom, and I hope this is showing up on the video. There we go. That might look better. So what I've done is I've just followed the flow of the scallop on here and followed it right up to the top and come up to the top. So it's going to be a blanket mold just pulling off of either side there. But some people might think that that's kind of a goofy seam, but I like it better than hopping across all of the across the other pieces there. It just doesn't look it won't look as obvious. So just if you could see that in the background, you're wondering what's that crazy looking seam for. But and then with the registry keys in there too, ready to go. So that's about all I wanted to cover for today. So I hope, Bob, that helps you out, and any other folks that are thinking about putting vents in. And that'll be it for today, everybody. See you at the next one.